The Golden Lord of humanity tore through reality itself, arriving not in a world of mortals, but in a cosmos where the devil himself had abandoned Hell's throne. As the Emperor's psychic presence flooded Los Angeles, it didn't just affect humans. It resonated through the very fabric of divine architecture, causing heaven's gates to shudder and Hell's abandoned throne to ignite with golden flame. Lucifer Morningstar of Earth 666. The TV universe's devil, who had rejected his father's plan, now faced a being who claimed humanity needed no gods at all. Two immortals, two visions of humanity's purpose, two wills that had shaped entire realities collided above the city of angels. The Emperor arrives from a distant future timeline where his Warhammer 40K universe has finally collapsed, forcing him to abandon the golden throne he'd been bound to for 10,000 years. The sky above downtown Los Angeles tore open at exactly midnight. It was not lightning or fire that split the darkness. It was something far stranger. A wound in existence itself opened above the famous Lux nightclub, spilling impossible golden light across the streets below. The air crackled with energy that made every hair stand on end. Car alarms began screaming across 10 city blocks. Traffic lights flickered and died. Cell phones went dark in people's hands. Inside Lux, Lucifer Morningstar stood behind his bar, pouring whiskey for Detective Chloe Decker. He wore his usual expensive black suit, his dark hair perfectly styled. He was mid-sentence, telling some story about ancient Rome, when he suddenly froze. His brown eyes went wide, then flashed bright red for just a second. The glass in his hand cracked. Whiskey spilled across the polished wood. "Lucifer?" Chloe asked, standing up from her bar stool. "What's wrong?" Lucifer's head tilted upward, staring at the ceiling as if he could see through it. His voice came out quiet, confused. "Father didn't make this one." Before Chloe could ask what he meant, Lucifer was already running. He moved faster than any human could, crossing the nightclub in seconds. He burst through the front doors and onto the sidewalk. Chloe followed, drawing her gun out of habit, though she had no idea what she was running toward. Outside, chaos filled the streets. Cars had stopped in the middle of intersections, engines dead. People stumbled on the sidewalks, holding their heads. Some had already collapsed, lying unconscious on the concrete. Others stared up at the sky with blank expressions, their mouths hanging open. A golden light poured down from above, growing brighter with each passing second. Then he came through. A figure descended from the tear in reality, massive and wrapped in golden armor that seemed to glow from within. He stood at least 8 feet tall, maybe more. His armor was covered in symbols and designs that hurt to look at directly. Long black hair framed a face of terrible, perfect beauty. His eyes burned with knowledge and power that felt older than the city, older than the country, older than human civilization itself. The moment his feet touched the ground, the concrete beneath him changed. The gray street turned to golden crystal, spreading outward in a perfect circle. Grass in a nearby planter box withered to dust. The air itself seemed to bend around him, distorting like heat waves on a summer day. People within 100 feet collapsed instantly. They didn't scream or fight it. They simply fell, unconscious before they hit the ground. Their minds couldn't handle the pressure of his presence. It was like standing too close to the sun. If the sun could think and that thinking could burn, Lucifer felt it too. A pressure against his mind, probing, analyzing. He pushed back with his own divine nature, creating a shield of will around himself. His eyes narrowed. "Well, the golden aesthetic is a bit on the nose, don't you think?" The Emperor turned his burning gaze toward Lucifer. When he spoke, his voice resonated with layers upon layers of sound, as if 1,000 people spoke at once. "You are not human, yet you walk among them. Another parasite feeding on their worship." Lucifer's trademark smirk faded. He stepped closer, unafraid. "I don't want worship. I walked away from hell long ago. Took me a while to figure out why, but eventually I realized humans deserve real choice. Not Father's predetermined plan or my punishment duty. Choice without purpose is merely chaos. The Emperor replied. His psychic senses washed over Lucifer, reading him like a book. You are fallen, cast out by your creator. Yet you remain here, interfering in human affairs while claiming to champion their freedom. I don't interfere. I run a nightclub and solve crimes. Lucifer gestured back toward Lux. Very different from showing up uninvited and putting people to sleep. They are not harmed, the Emperor said simply. Their minds cannot process my presence. It is a mercy that they feel nothing. His eyes swept across the city, taking in the buildings, the people, the organized chaos of Los Angeles. I have come to provide direction. Humanity stumbles in darkness, fighting itself, while greater threats gather beyond the stars. A whooshing sound filled the air. Massive white wings spread wide as Amenadiel landed between Lucifer and the Emperor. The angel's usually calm face showed shock and confusion. His wings flared defensively. Brother, what is that? Lucifer kept his eyes on the golden giant. That is an excellent question. The Emperor studied Amenadiel with interest. Another divine being. You multiply like insects here. How many false gods does this world suffer? Amenadiel's jaw tightened. We are not false anything. We are angels, servants of God. Protectors of humanity. Protectors who allow their charges to war among themselves? Who permit crime, suffering, division? The Emperor's voice carried disappointment. I have watched humanity across ages beyond your counting. The last 10,000 years alone. I spent bound to a golden throne. My consciousness stretched thin, keeping my species alive. Your protection is inadequate. Lucifer felt his power rising, his true face threatening to emerge. And your solution is what, exactly? Marching in here like you own the place? Ownership is not my goal, the Emperor stated. Elevation is. Unity. Purpose. I will guide this species to heights they cannot reach alone. They don't need your guidance, Lucifer shot back. They need space to grow, to choose, to become what they decide to become. The Emperor's expression hardened. You believe that because you have not seen the alternative. Choice leads to division. Division leads to weakness. Weakness leads to extinction. Lucifer stepped forward, his eyes starting to glow red. Let me show you something I learned about humans a long time ago. He focused his power, the ability he'd been born with, the gift that made people reveal their deepest desires, the power that made even the strongest mortals speak truth. He pushed it toward the Emperor, testing limits he'd never pushed before. He'd never tried this trick on something non-human, but there was a first time for everything. Nothing happened. The Emperor didn't even blink. Lucifer felt his power slide off the golden giant like water off glass. His eyes widened in surprise. That had never happened before. Never. Apparently gods from other realities didn't play by the same rules. Parlor tricks, the Emperor said dismissively. Your abilities manipulate mortal psychology. Mine reshape reality itself. To demonstrate, the Emperor raised one armored hand. Amenadiel had been moving to flank him, wings spread, ready to attack. Suddenly the angel froze mid-step. His wings locked in place. His whole body became rigid, trapped by invisible force. Even his ability to slow time failed against this overwhelming mental grip. His eyes could still move, showing fear and fury, but nothing else responded. Stop it! Lucifer demanded, his voice taking on an edge of genuine anger. Let him go! When I am finished, making my point. The Emperor held Amenadiel suspended for 5 long seconds. The angel struggled against the psychic bonds but couldn't break free. Finally, the Emperor lowered his hand. Amenadiel dropped, catching himself with his wings at the last moment. He landed hard, breathing heavy. That was just a fraction of my power, the Emperor explained calmly. I could have crushed his mind, rewritten his thoughts, made him forget his own name. I chose mercy, his burning eyes fixed on both divine beings. Tell your father, if he still watches this world, that humanity's future is no longer his to determine. They require a true guardian, one who will not hide in shadows and allow them to destroy themselves. Chloe had watched all of this from near the entrance to Lux. her gun still drawn but clearly useless. Now she stepped forward, trying to project authority, despite what she'd just witnessed. LAPD, I don't know what you are, but you're causing a public disturbance. People are hurt. You need to come with me. The Emperor's gaze shifted to her. For a moment, Chloe felt that same pressure against her mind, that burning presence trying to push inside, but it couldn't quite grab hold. She felt it slip and slide, unable to find purchase. The Emperor's eyes narrowed with interest. Curious, he said quietly. You are different. A void in probability. Someone created you deliberately, shielded you from powers like mine. He took one step toward her, and Chloe forced herself not to back away. A miracle designed to anchor certainty in a world of manipulation. I'm a detective with the LAPD, Chloe said firmly, though her voice shook slightly. And in this city, nobody's above the law. Something almost like respect flickered across the Emperor's face. You possess courage your species often lacks. That is good. You will need it for what comes. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. More people were gathering despite the danger, recording on their phones. News helicopters circled overhead. The Emperor looked up at them, then around at the growing crowd. He seemed to make a decision. I will establish my base of operations at the highest point in this city, he declared. From there, I will begin the work of unification. Your primitive law enforcement is inadequate. I shall establish proper order. He began to rise into the air without wings or jets, simply ascending through pure will. You have 1 day to consider my offer. Submit peacefully to guidance, or resist and watch your species stumble toward extinction. Wait! Lucifer shouted up at him. You can't just— But the Emperor was already gone, streaking through the night sky like a golden comet. He moved toward the hills, toward Griffith Observatory, the highest visible point overlooking Los Angeles. As he flew, golden light trailed behind him, visible for miles. Amenadiel folded his wings back, his face troubled. We need to talk to Father. Now. Lucifer watched the golden light disappear into the hills. Something tells me Dad's going to make this our problem, brother. Chloe holstered her gun with shaking hands. What the hell was that? That, Lucifer said slowly, was something new. Something neither heaven nor hell has seen before. He looked at his brother. And something tells me he's not going to just leave when we ask nicely. At Griffith Observatory, the Emperor landed on the main plaza. His power reached out, touching the building, reshaping it. Stone and metal flowed like water, transforming. Golden spires grew from the white dome. The walls took on a luminous quality, inscribed with symbols of power. In minutes, the familiar landmark became something else entirely, a fortress of impossible architecture that glowed with inner light, visible across the entire city. The Emperor stood at the center of his new stronghold, looking down at Los Angeles spread out below. Millions of lights, millions of minds, all scattered, purposeless, vulnerable. He would change that. He would give them unity, direction, protection. Whether they wanted it or not. His psychic senses spread across the city, cataloging, analyzing, planning. He sensed the divine beings below, already gathering to oppose him. He sensed the fear in the population. He sensed the chaos of a species without proper guidance. All of it would change, starting tonight. Heaven existed outside normal space, a realm of white light and impossible architecture where angels gathered in halls that stretched beyond measurement. Amenadiel stood before the assembled host, his wings folded respectfully as he delivered his report. Dozens of angels listened, their forms glowing with divine light, their faces showing concern and confusion. This being is not of Father's creation, Amenadiel explained, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. His power rivals our own, perhaps exceeds it. He claims to have watched humanity across ages, beyond counting. The last 10,000 years spent bound to something he calls a golden throne in a universe that has now collapsed. Remiel, an angel with silver wings and sharp features, stepped forward. Could this be a test from Father? Another trial for humanity to overcome? Or perhaps, suggested another angel, this guardian could help us. If demons threaten Earth, would a protector not serve our purpose? Amenadiel shook his head. His methods are not protection. He seeks total control. Every human mind bent to his will, unified under his command. That is not Father's plan for humanity. Father's plan, Remiel said carefully, involves free will. But Father remains silent on this matter. Perhaps he wants us to handle this ourselves. Perhaps this is our test, not humanity's. The debate continued, angels arguing in voices like music and thunder. But no answer came from above. God, as always, remained silent. His plan, if he had one, stayed hidden. Finally, Amenadiel spread his wings. I will return to Earth. Lucifer and I must find a solution, with or without Father's guidance. Back in Los Angeles, morning light revealed the changed Griffith Observatory to the whole city. News helicopters circled the golden fortress that had appeared overnight. Every television station showed the same images, the impossible architecture, the glowing spires, the being of golden light who stood at its center. Traffic on the freeways slowed to a crawl. As drivers stared up at the hills, social media exploded with theories, fears, and wonder. Lucifer stood on the balcony of his penthouse apartment, looking toward the transformed observatory through expensive binoculars. He wore silk pajamas and held a glass of whiskey despite the early hour. Maze appeared behind him, her demon face showing, eyes black and teeth sharp. "Want me to kill it?" she asked simply. "Tried fighting him already." Lucifer replied without lowering the binoculars. Amenadiel barely survived a casual gesture. "You'd last about 3 seconds. Then what's the plan?" Lucifer finally turned to face her, his expression unusually serious. "I'm going to do what I do best. Talk to him. Figure out what he really wants. Every being wants something, even ancient golden refugees from dead universes. And if talking doesn't work, then we're probably all screwed." Lucifer downed his whiskey in one swallow. "But I'm an excellent talker." An hour later, Lucifer drove his black Corvette up the winding roads toward Griffith Observatory. The usual tourists had been replaced by police barriers and news vans. Officers tried to stop him, but one look with his glowing red eyes, and they stepped aside, suddenly certain they should let him pass. The road was clear after that. He parked in the empty lot and walked toward the transformed building. The golden architecture seemed to pulse with inner light. The symbols carved into the walls shifted when he looked directly at them, making his eyes water. The entrance, once simple glass doors, now appeared as a gateway of liquid gold that rippled like water. Lucifer stepped through without hesitation. Inside, the building had changed completely. The usual exhibits and displays were gone, replaced by a vast open hall. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, covered in stars that moved in patterns no Earth sky had ever shown. And at the center, standing before a window that looked down on Los Angeles, stood the Emperor. "I wondered if you would come," the Emperor said without turning around. His voice echoed through the chamber, layered and deep. "Most beings with sense would flee. I've been called many things," Lucifer replied, walking forward with hands in his pockets. "Sensible isn't usually one of them." The Emperor turned to face him. Up close, without the chaos of their first meeting, Lucifer could truly see him. The armor was not just gold, but something else, a metal that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. The face was human in shape, but perfect in a way that felt wrong, as if someone had tried to capture the ideal of humanity and missed something essential in the process. The eyes burned with power that made Lucifer's own divine nature feel small. "You came to talk," the Emperor stated, "to try and change my mind through words. You believe yourself persuasive. I am the devil," Lucifer said with a slight smile. "Persuasion is literally my—" "Then speak. I will listen. I am not unreasonable." Lucifer walked to the window, standing beside the golden giant. Together they looked down at the city sprawling below. "You say you want to save humanity, to guide them. But look at them down there. Really look. See what they've built without your guidance. Art, music, science, love, families, friendships. All of it messy and chaotic and absolutely beautiful. And also war, crime, suffering, division," the Emperor countered. "For every act of beauty, 10 acts of cruelty. For every moment of unity, 100 of conflict. Your romantic view blinds you to reality. My view comes from living among them," Lucifer shot back, "not watching from a throne. I've seen a mother work 3 jobs to feed her kids. I've seen strangers help each other during disasters. I've seen addicts choose recovery even when every cell in their body screams for the drug. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing in the universe." The Emperor's expression remained unchanged. Outliers, exceptions, statistically insignificant compared to the whole. The majority of your species requires structure, discipline, purpose provided from above. The majority are the outliers, Lucifer insisted, turning to face him directly. Every single person is unique. Every single one makes choices that matter. That's the whole point. I have guided humanity across more years than your recorded history contains, the Emperor said, his voice carrying the weight of ages. I watched them nearly destroy themselves in an age of strife and war. I witnessed horrors that would break your mind. Only through unity, through my guidance, did they survive as long as they did. I know what works. In your reality, maybe, Lucifer argued. But this isn't your reality. Different rules. Different possibilities. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. You talk about watching humanity for all those years. That's a long time to be alone. To bear that burden by yourself. And then to lose it all when your universe collapsed. Something flickered in the Emperor's eyes, too quick to read. You attempt psychology on me? You are not the first. I'm just saying, maybe your methods aren't about what's best for humanity. Maybe they're about what makes you feel less alone, less responsible. If everyone's following your plan, their failures are your failures, but at least you're in control. At least you still have a purpose after losing everything. The Emperor's hand moved faster than sight. Suddenly, Lucifer found himself lifted off the ground by invisible force, held suspended in the air. The pressure around his throat wasn't physical, it was pure psychic power, crushing down on his mind. You know nothing of loneliness, the Emperor said, his voice cold as ice. You abandoned your post out of spite for your father. I abandoned mine because my universe was dying, collapsing into entropy and chaos. I fled to save what remained of humanity's legacy. We are not the same. He released Lucifer, who dropped to his feet, coughing. Touched a nerve there, did I? Lucifer rasped, rubbing his throat. Before the Emperor could respond, the air in the chamber changed. Colors shifted wrong. Sounds echoed strangely. Both beings felt it simultaneously, a tearing in the fabric of reality itself. The Emperor's head snapped up, his senses reaching outward. It begins. What begins? Lucifer demanded. The cost of my arrival. The Emperor strode to the window, his hands moving in complex patterns. Golden light formed between his fingers, creating shapes and symbols. My presence here has weakened the barriers between dimensions. I am a beacon, drawing attention from things that hunger for new realities to consume. Through the window, the sky over Los Angeles began to darken despite the morning sun. Clouds formed that moved against the wind, swirling in patterns that hurt to watch. The air itself seemed to thicken, becoming harder to breathe. And in the distance, barely visible, shapes moved at the edge of perception. Things that existed partially in this world and partially in spaces that had no names. What are those? Lucifer asked, genuine concern in his voice for the first time. Predators, the Emperor replied. Reality eaters. Beings that exist between dimensions, feeding on worlds they can reach. In my reality, we called them by many names. chaos entities, warp spawn, the ruinous powers. Here, you might call them cosmic horrors. Lucifer stared at the shapes gathering in the sky. They seemed to twist and fold in impossible ways. Too many angles, too many surfaces. Looking directly at them made his head ache and his divine nature recoil. Those things exist here? They exist everywhere, in the spaces between realities. My arrival has given them a path, a weakness they can exploit. The Emperor's voice carried no regret, only grim certainty. This is why humanity needs guidance. These threats do not negotiate. They do not stop. They consume and corrupt and destroy. Only unity can stand against them. A crack of thunder that wasn't quite thunder split the air. One of the shapes in the sky grew larger, pressing against reality like a face pressed against glass. For a moment, just a moment, it became almost visible. Tentacles and eyes and mouths, all in the wrong places, all opening at once. Then it pushed harder, and reality bent. The Emperor raised both hands. Golden fire erupted from his palms, shooting into the sky. The beam struck the cosmic horror, and it screamed, a sound that existed in minds rather than ears. The thing retreated, pulling back through the crack in reality. The Emperor sealed the breach with pure will, forcing the dimensions back together. How many of those things are out there? Lucifer asked quietly. Countless, and more will come. My presence calls to them like blood in water calls to sharks. The Emperor lowered his hands, his armor glowing brighter from the exertion. This is what I tried to warn you about. The threats you cannot see. The enemies your species is not prepared to face. Lucifer felt the weight of the revelation settling on him. For the first time since this golden being had arrived, doubt crept in. Maybe humanity did need protection from things like that. Maybe free will didn't matter if everyone was eaten by space monsters. The Emperor seemed to sense his thoughts. You begin to understand. Choice means nothing if extinction is the result. I offer survival. Everything else is secondary. Before Lucifer could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. Something's happening downtown. People are acting strange. We need you. He looked up at the Emperor. What did you do to the city? Nothing yet. But I sense what she speaks of. The Emperor's eyes unfocused. His psychic senses reaching across Los Angeles. Interesting. The dimensional weakening is not just allowing things in. It is allowing influences through. Psychic pressure. Emotional manipulation. The entities test this reality's defenses. Then we need to protect people. Indeed. The Emperor moved toward the exit. For once, we agree on something. They descended from the observatory together. An unlikely pair. Lucifer drove while the Emperor sat in the passenger seat of the Corvette, his massive armored form somehow fitting in the small sports car. It should have been absurd, but neither being commented on it. I have a question, Lucifer said as they sped down the winding roads. You keep calling yourself the Emperor of mankind, but you're human yourself, right? Or were you? I was born human many thousands of years ago, the Emperor replied, watching the city approach. I evolved beyond standard human limitations through a process your science could not comprehend. But yes, at my core, I remain human. That is why I fight for this species. They are mine, my people, my responsibility. Possessive much? Is it possessive for a parent to protect their child? If the child is 8 billion people who never asked for your protection? Yeah, kind of. Lucifer took a sharp turn without slowing down. Besides, humans here have actual God as a father. Absent father, sure, but still, your God, the Emperor said with disdain, allows suffering he could prevent. Permits evil he could stop. That is not parenting. That is negligence. Or, Lucifer countered, it's trusting his children to figure things out themselves. To grow through struggle. To become strong through choice rather than obedience. Then your God is a fool. They reached downtown Los Angeles, and the scene confirmed what Chloe had texted about. People wandered the streets with blank expressions, moving in patterns that made no sense. Some stood perfectly still, staring at nothing. Others walked in circles, repeating the same steps over and over. Their eyes were unfocused, seeing something that wasn't there. Chloe stood by her police car, trying to talk to a woman who wouldn't respond. When she saw Lucifer's car, she rushed over. Thank God. It started about an hour ago. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands across the city. It's like they're sleepwalking but with their eyes open. The Emperor emerged from the car, drawing gasps and pointing from the few people still coherent enough to notice. He ignored them, focusing his senses on the affected humans. They are being influenced. Something is whispering to them from beyond the dimensional barriers, filling their minds with visions, dreams, promises. Can you stop it? Chloe asked, fear evident in her voice. I can shield them temporarily. The Emperor raised his hands, and golden light spread from his position like ripples in water. Where it touched the affected people, they blinked, shook their heads, and looked around in confusion. Within seconds, dozens of people snapped out of their trances, bewildered but themselves again. One man stumbled toward Chloe, tears running down. His face. I saw things. Beautiful, terrible things. They wanted me to let them in. They said they'd give me everything I ever wanted. What kind of things? Lucifer asked, already suspecting the answer. I don't know. I can't remember their faces. But I wanted to say yes. God help me, I wanted to say yes. The Emperor's expression darkened. This is merely the beginning. The entities are testing humanity's resistance, finding the weak points. Soon they will push harder, and my temporary shields will not be enough. Maze arrived then, riding her motorcycle at dangerous speed. She pulled up beside them, her demon face hidden but her black eyes visible. It's happening all over the city. People going crazy, seeing things, talking to things that aren't there. They are there, the Emperor corrected. You simply cannot see them. Not yet. Doctor. Linda Martin pushed through the crowd, her professional composure cracking. She was breathing hard, clearly having run several blocks. Lucifer, my... Patients, all of them, called me in the last hour. Same symptoms, vivid hallucinations, hearing voices. Some are considering suicide because the voices are so persuasive. Linda, what are you doing here? Lucifer asked with concern. Trying to help. She looked at the Emperor, and despite her fear, she stepped closer to him. You're causing this. Your arrival broke something, and now people are suffering. That's trauma. Massive trauma. Across an entire city. The Emperor looked down at her. This small human woman who dared to challenge him. I did not intend this consequence. But it proves my point. Humanity is vulnerable. Without proper mental defenses, they fall prey to any entity that whispers sweetly enough. Then give them defenses, Linda insisted. If you can shield them, do it. Protect them without controlling them. The two are not separate. True protection requires integration of purpose, unity of will. Individual minds are too weak, too fractured. They require structure. Provide. No, Chloe said firmly, stepping beside Linda. You can teach them to protect themselves. Give them tools, not chains. The Emperor studied both women, his ancient mind calculating. Around them, more people began falling into trances despite his shields. The cosmic pressure was increasing, the entities beyond growing bolder. Time was running out. I will consider your words, he finally said. But first, I must address the immediate threat. He turned to Lucifer. You claim to know humanity. Very well. Choose one human to represent your philosophy. I will choose another to demonstrate mine. We will see which approach survives what comes next. Lucifer's eyes narrowed. You want to run an experiment? With people's lives? I want proof. You claim freedom makes humans strong. I claim structure makes them survive. Let us test both theories before this city tears itself apart. The Emperor's voice carried absolute certainty. Choose your champion. I will choose mine. 24 hours. We will see whose method prevails. Lucifer looked at Chloe, at Linda, at Maze, all of them watching, waiting for his response. In the sky above, the clouds continued to darken and swirl. Reality continued to bend, and somewhere beyond sight, cosmic horrors continued to press against the barriers, hungry and patient and inevitable. Fine, Lucifer said finally. You've got yourself a wager. The Emperor chose Detective Dan Espinosa. Lucifer protested immediately, arguing it was unfair to use someone still grieving his ex-wife's death, someone whose faith had been shattered by loss. But the Emperor's logic was cold and clear. Dan represented exactly the type of human who needed guidance most: broken, searching, vulnerable to despair. He was the perfect test subject for the Emperor's methods of improvement. Lucifer chose Ella Lopez. The forensic scientist possessed unshakable optimism, despite everything she had seen in her work. She maintained her faith in God even while processing crime scenes that would crush most people's beliefs. She represented humanity at its most resilient, choosing hope when darkness surrounded her. If anyone could prove that human spirit alone was enough, it was Ella. The 24-hour test began at noon in downtown Los Angeles. Dan stood in the parking lot of the police station, confusion on his face as the Emperor approached. The golden giant towered over him, radiating power that made Dan's skin prickle. "Detective Espinosa," the Emperor said, his layered voice making Dan wince. "I offer you a gift: protection, knowledge, the ability to face any threat without fear." "What kind of threat?" Dan asked, his hand instinctively moving toward his gun. "The same threats that took your wife from you. Chaos, violence, the cruel randomness of a universe that cares nothing for human suffering." The Emperor placed one armored hand on Dan's shoulder. "I can make you stronger, better, able to protect your daughter from everything that lurks in shadows." At the mention of Trixie, Dan's resistance crumbled. "What do I have to do?" "Simply accept my guidance." Golden light flowed from the Emperor's hand into Dan's body. The detective gasped as power flooded through him. His senses sharpened dramatically. He could hear conversations 3 blocks away. He could see in perfect detail, reading license plates a mile distant. His thoughts became faster, clearer, processing information at impossible speeds. And beneath it all, he felt the Emperor's presence in his mind, a vast consciousness offering knowledge and direction. "What did you do to me?" Dan breathed, staring at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. "I have enhanced you, connected you to my will. You now possess reflexes and awareness beyond normal human limits. And you are protected." The Emperor's eyes burned brighter. "The entities that press against reality cannot touch your mind while you remain under my aegis. You are safe. Your daughter is safe." Across the city, Lucifer met Ella in the evidence lab at the precinct. She looked up from her microscope, her usual bright smile appearing despite the strangeness of recent days. "Lucifer, are you here to help with this weird case? Because I've got samples that don't make any scientific sense whatsoever. Actually, I need your help with something," Lucifer said, leaning against her lab table. "How do you feel about participating in a little experiment?" "Nothing dangerous." "Well, probably not too dangerous." Ella's smile faded slightly. "What kind of experiment?" Lucifer explained the situation, leaving out nothing. The Emperor, the cosmic threats, the wager about humanity's nature. Ella listened with growing alarm, her hand unconsciously touching the cross necklace she always wore. When Lucifer finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "So you're saying there are actual monsters from other dimensions trying to break into our world, and you and this Emperor guy are betting on whether humans need a cosmic babysitter or not?" "That's the simplified version, yes. And you picked me to prove humans are strong enough on their own?" "You're the strongest person I know, Ella." "And I've known a lot of people over a very long time." Ella took a deep breath, then nodded. "Okay, I'm in. But only because I actually believe what you're saying. Humans are amazing. We don't need some golden Control freak telling us what to do. That's the spirit. Lucifer grinned. Though, I should mention, I can't give you any special powers. The whole point is proving that regular humans, making their own choices, are enough. Regular humans with maybe a little advice from the devil when things get rough? When you ask for it, yes, but the choices are yours. The test began in earnest as reality continued to deteriorate across Los Angeles. The dimensional barriers weakened with each passing hour. More people fell into trances, their minds touched by whispers from beyond. Strange lights appeared in the sky. Electronics malfunctioned in patterns that suggested intelligence. Animals fled the city in droves, sensing danger that humans couldn't yet see. Dan moved through the chaos with machine efficiency. The Emperor's enhancements made him perfect for crisis response. When a car accident blocked traffic, Dan assessed the situation in seconds, directed emergency services with optimal precision, and even predicted a secondary collision before it happened, preventing further casualties. His emotions felt distant, unimportant compared to the clarity of purpose the Emperor provided. Chloe watched her ex-partner work, growing increasingly disturbed. Dan, are you okay? You're acting strange. I'm acting optimal, Dan replied, his voice flatter than usual. The Emperor has removed unnecessary emotional interference. I can focus on what matters now. What matters? Dan, you're talking like a robot. I'm talking like someone who sees clearly for the first time. Dan's enhanced senses detected a dimensional weak point 3 blocks east. There's a breach forming near 5th Street. I need to evacuate that area. How do you know that? The Emperor knows. I know what he knows. Dan turned away, already moving toward the threat. I have to go. Lives depend on optimal response time. Chloe grabbed his arm, forcing him to stop. Dan, when's the last time you thought about Dan? Trixie? Really thought about her? Dan paused. His enhanced mind processed the question, but accessing genuine emotion about his daughter felt difficult, like reaching through thick glass. Trixie is safe. The Emperor ensures her safety. That's what matters. No. What matters is that you're her father, not some enhanced security system. Her father who tells bad jokes and gives too tight hugs and cries at her school plays. Chloe's voice cracked with emotion. Where did that Dan go? That Dan was weak, compromised by sentiment. But even as Dan spoke the words, something in him resisted, a small voice deep in his mind, asking if this was really better. The Emperor's presence immediately soothed that doubt, explaining that such resistance was normal, that it would fade as Dan fully accepted his improved state. Meanwhile, Ella faced her own challenges. The forensic scientist had volunteered to help evacuate civilians from areas where dimensional tears were most likely to appear. Unlike Dan with his supernatural enhancements, she relied on organization, community cooperation, and faith. She coordinated with church groups, neighborhood watches, and local businesses to create safe zones and evacuation routes. We can do this, she told a group of frightened residents huddled in a community center. We look out for each other. That's what humans do best. We don't need some all-powerful emperor. We just need each other and a little faith. A woman in the crowd, still partially under the influence of the cosmic entities, spoke in a hollow voice. The voices say we're not strong enough. They say we need to accept the Golden One's protection, or we'll all die. The voices are lying, Ella said firmly, though her own hands trembled slightly. Yes, there are scary things out there, but we've faced scary things before, and we've survived. Not because someone controlled us, but because we chose to be brave together. The dimensional barrier near their location, suddenly, fractured. A tear opened in the air itself, spilling light that was wrong, colors that shouldn't exist. Through the gap, something pressed forward, a shape that hurt to look at, all angles and surfaces that folded in impossible ways. The people in the community center screamed. Ella felt terror grip her heart. Every instinct said to run. But she thought about what Lucifer had said, about how he chose her because she was strong. She thought about her faith, about believing in something even when you couldn't see proof, and she made a choice. Everyone, close your eyes, she shouted. Don't look at it directly. Hold hands. Pray if you know how. Think about the people you love. Fill your minds with good things. Don't let the scary stuff in. The entity pushed harder against reality, its presence causing physical pain to everyone nearby. But the people in the community center did as Ella instructed. They closed their eyes, held hands, formed a circle. Some prayed aloud. Others simply thought about their families, their friends, the things that made life worth living. And something remarkable happened. The entity stopped advancing. The barrier of human will, fragile as paper, but backed by genuine choice and connection, held it at bay. The creature seemed confused by this resistance, unused to prey that fought back with nothing but determination and faith. It pressed harder, but the circle of humans pushed back with their minds, their hearts, their absolute refusal to surrender. Lucifer arrived just as the standoff reached its peak. He saw Ella leading the group, her cross necklace glowing slightly with reflected light, her voice strong despite her fear. Pride swelled in his chest. This was exactly what he'd been trying to show the Emperor. Humans didn't need enhancement or control. They needed support and the freedom to choose courage. The cosmic entity finally retreated, sliding back through the dimensional tier. The gap sealed itself, with a sound like breaking. Glass played backwards. Everyone in the community center collapsed in exhaustion, but they were alive, conscious, and most importantly, still themselves. Ella opened her eyes, breathing hard. Did we just scare off a space monster with the power of friendship? More or less, Lucifer confirmed, helping her to her feet. How do you feel? Terrified, exhausted, but also kind of amazing? Ella laughed shakily. We did that ourselves. No special powers. Just regular people, choosing not to give up. Across the city, Dan's enhanced senses detected another major breach forming near the downtown financial district. The Emperor's voice resonated in his mind, providing tactical analysis and optimal response protocols. Dan moved to intercept, his body functioning at peak efficiency, his emotions carefully regulated to prevent interference with his mission. He found himself facing a larger tear than before, wider and more stable. Multiple entities pressed against it from the other side, their shapes writhing and changing. The Emperor had given him psychic defenses, a golden shield around his mind that kept the creature's influence at bay. He could think clearly, while others nearby fell into trances or fled in mindless panic. Evacuate the area, Dan commanded, arriving police officers. His voice carried an authority that made them obey instantly, even though they technically outranked him. The Emperor's presence lending weight to his words. Dan moved toward the breach, preparing to hold this position until the Emperor could seal it properly. But then he saw her, Trixie. His daughter was supposed to be at school, safe, far from the danger zones. But there she was, somehow separated from her class during an evacuation, standing frozen with fear as the dimensional tier widened above her. A cosmic entity reached through, a tendril of impossible geometry extending toward the terrified child. The Emperor's voice in Dan's mind was immediate and certain. The child is in an undefensible position. Optimal strategy requires sealing the breach. Acceptable losses for strategic gain. Proceed with primary objective. Dan's enhanced mind processed this conclusion. Mathematically, it was correct. Sacrificing one child to save hundreds made logical sense. The Emperor provided calculations, probability matrices, tactical analysis, all supporting this course of action. Dan's body began moving to execute the optimal strategy, to seal the breach and accept the necessary loss. But then something broke. Deep in Dan's mind, beneath the Emperor's enhancements and control, the real Dan Espinosa screamed. That was his daughter, his little girl, the person he loved more than his own life. Every instinct, every emotion the Emperor had suppressed came roaring back with the force of a tidal wave. "No!" Dan shouted. And the word wasn't just sound. It was rejection. Complete, absolute rejection of the Emperor's guidance. The golden presence in his mind recoiled as Dan's will asserted itself, choosing love over logic, choosing fatherhood over optimization. The enhancements flickered and failed as Dan's humanity reasserted control. He ran toward Trixie, no longer moving with supernatural speed but with desperate father's determination. The cosmic entity's tendril wrapped around the child, beginning to pull her toward the dimensional tear. Dan grabbed his daughter, wrapping his arms around her and pulling with all his merely human strength. "You can't have her! She's mine! My daughter!" The entity pulled harder. Dan felt his grip slipping, felt his daughter being torn from his arms. But he didn't let go. He couldn't let go. Even if it killed him, even if he got pulled into that nightmare dimension, he would not release his child. This was what mattered. Not optimal strategy, not perfect tactics. Love, family, choice, the things that made him human. Suddenly, golden light flooded the street, but not from Dan. The Emperor himself appeared, having sensed his test subject's rebellion. With a gesture, he severed the entity's tendril and sealed the breach. Trixie fell into Dan's arms, crying, but safe. The Emperor stood over them both, his expression unreadable. "You rejected my guidance," the Emperor stated. "You chose emotion over logic, sentiment over survival." Dan held his daughter close, meeting the golden giant's burning gaze without flinching. "Yeah, I did. And I'd do it again. Because she's not a tactical consideration. She's my daughter, and I'm not a weapon or a tool. I'm a father first. Always." The Emperor stared at him for a long moment. Around them, the city continued its descent into chaos. More tiers opened across Los Angeles. More entities pressed through. The 24-hour test period was nearly over, and the results were becoming clear. Ella's approach had saved her community center through human connection and choice. Dan's approach had worked until it demanded he sacrifice his humanity itself. At the Griffith Observatory Fortress, the Emperor and Lucifer stood together once more, watching the city below. Chloe, Amenadiel, Maze, Linda, and the others gathered around them. Dan held Trixie close, refusing to let her go. Ella stood with her community center group, tired but unbroken. "Your champion failed," the Emperor said to Lucifer. "He rejected my enhancements. He allowed emotion to compromise his judgment." "Your champion succeeded," Lucifer countered. "He remained human. He made the choice that mattered most to him. That's not failure. That's victory." "And mine?" The Emperor gestured toward Ella. "She faced a cosmic entity with nothing but faith and determination. By all logical analysis, she should have failed. Yet she prevailed. Because humans are stronger than your logic accounts for," Lucifer said quietly. "When they choose to be. When they support each other. When they're allowed to be fully, messily, beautifully human." The Emperor was silent, his ancient mind processing what he had witnessed. For longer than recorded history, he had believed humanity needed his guidance to survive. He had built an empire on the principle that human will alone was insufficient against cosmic horrors. But here, in this reality, he had seen something different. He had seen humans stand against nightmare entities with nothing but each other and their choices, and they had survived. But the moment of reflection was shattered by a sound that made even the Emperor tense. Every dimensional tier across Los Angeles suddenly widened simultaneously. The cosmic entities had been testing, probing. Now they launched their full assault. The sky turned black with writhing shapes. Reality itself began to fracture as hundreds of breaches opened at once. The true invasion had begun, and 24 hours of philosophical debate meant nothing against the tide of hungry gods and reality eaters that now descended upon Earth. The sky over Los Angeles turned into a nightmare. Hundreds of dimensional tiers opened simultaneously, spilling creatures that defied description. Some had too many limbs. Others had faces where their bodies should be. A few were just geometric shapes that moved with terrible purpose and hunger. The air filled with sounds that weren't quite sounds. Impressions of laughter and screaming and whispers all at once. People across the city ran in panic. Cars crashed as drivers abandoned them mid-street. Buildings emptied as everyone sought shelter that didn't exist. The cosmic entities had stopped testing and started feeding. They reached down with tendrils of thought and shadow, touching human minds, drinking fear and pain like wine. At the Griffith Observatory, the Emperor moved to the edge of his fortress balcony. Golden light blazed from his armor as he prepared to fight. "This is what I warned you about, what I tried to prevent. Now watch as your precious freedom dies screaming. Then, help us stop it," Lucifer demanded, his own eyes glowing red with power. "Work with us instead of gloating. I am helping." The Emperor raised both hands. Beams of golden energy shot from his palms, striking the nearest cosmic entities. Where the light touched them, they burned and screamed and dissolved. But for every one he destroyed, 3 more pushed through the dimensional tiers. But I am one being. Even my power has limits against numbers like these. Amenadiel landed beside them, his wings spread wide. Heaven's forces are mobilizing, but Father gave specific orders. We can fight to protect, but the solution must come from Earth itself. This is humanity's test. Of course it is, Lucifer muttered bitterly. Dad never could resist a teaching moment. Down in the city, Ella gathered survivors in the community center that had become her stronghold. More people arrived every minute, fleeing the creatures in the streets. She organized them quickly, turning fear into action. Everyone who can fight, grab anything you can use as a weapon. Everyone else, help secure the doors and windows. We held them off once. We can do it again. There's too many this time, someone cried out. We can't fight all of them with just hope and prayers. Then we fight with more than hope and prayers, Ella said firmly. We fight with courage and teamwork, and the absolute refusal to give up. That's what humans do. We survive. But even as she spoke, a massive entity descended upon the community center. This one was larger than the others, more solid, more real. It had a shape that almost made sense, like a giant made of smoke and starlight and hunger. Its voice resonated through everyone's minds simultaneously. You cannot resist. You are food. You are nothing. Accept the Golden One's control or accept consumption. These are your only choices. The building shook as the entity pressed against the walls. Windows cracked. The ceiling groaned. People screamed, their courage faltering in the face of such overwhelming power. Ella felt her own faith wavering. How could regular humans stand against something like this? Maybe the Emperor was right. Maybe they did need his control to survive. Then, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Dan stood beside her, Trixie safe with Chloe further back in the building. The detective's eyes were clear now, free of the Emperor's influence. We don't have to beat it alone, he said. That's what I learned. It's not about being strong enough by yourself. It's about choosing to be strong together. Ella nodded slowly, understanding flooding through her. Everyone, join hands again. Don't fight it with force. Fight it with connection. Show it what humanity really means. The survivors formed circles, holding hands, pressing close together. They thought about the people they loved, the memories that mattered, the moments that made life precious. And something remarkable happened. The entity pressing against their building couldn't advance. Human will, fragile individually but powerful collectively, created a barrier of pure choice and determination. The creature howled in frustration. It had never encountered prey that fought back this way, not with power but with connection, not with strength but with love and stubborn refusal to surrender. It pressed harder, but the humans pressed back, and the standoff held. Across the city, similar scenes played out. Groups of people banding together, supporting each other, creating pockets of resistance through nothing but human courage and choice. But it wasn't enough. The entities kept coming. More tiers opened. The barriers between dimensions continued to weaken. Los Angeles was being overrun despite humanity's remarkable resilience. At the fortress, the Emperor unleashed his full power. Golden fire erupted in waves, destroying dozens of cosmic entities at once. But exhaustion began to show on his ancient face. I cannot maintain this indefinitely. The breach points are too numerous. We need to seal the dimensional barriers permanently, or this invasion will never end. How do we do that? Chloe asked. having arrived with LAPD backup that proved useless against interdimensional threats but refused to abandon the city. The barriers require stabilization from within, the Emperor explained between attacks. Someone must anchor themselves to Earth's dimensional structure, fragment their consciousness across the planet to create a living shield. It would require dispersing one's power and identity permanently. That sounds like dying, Mays observed bluntly. It is, and it isn't. The consciousness would survive but never be whole again, never able to reform into a single being. Eternal fragmentation in service of protection. The Emperor destroyed another wave of entities. In my reality, I spent 10,000 years bound to the Golden Throne, barely alive, sustaining humanity through endless sacrifice. I did not escape a collapsing universe, only to trap myself again in a different form. Lucifer looked at the Golden Giant with new understanding. You're afraid, not of dying, of being trapped again, of losing yourself. I am not afraid, the Emperor said, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. I am simply unwilling to make that sacrifice for a species that rejects my guidance. Then let me do it, Amenadiel said suddenly. I'm an angel. I exist partially outside normal reality already. Perhaps I could anchor the barriers. Your divine nature is wrong, the Emperor replied, immediately. N-Hi-D-L, work B-L, In-Na-D-L. It would create interference, not stabilization. The anchor must be purely psychic, purely mental. It requires someone who exists in thought as much as in flesh. They all looked at the Emperor. He was the only being present who fit that description. His psychic power dwarfed even angelic might. His consciousness existed across multiple levels of reality. He was, in fact, the perfect candidate for exactly the sacrifice he claimed to be, unwilling to make. The Emperor met their gazes, his expression hardening. No, I did not survive the death of my universe, only to trap myself here. There must be another way, but there wasn't. They all knew it. The entities kept coming. More people died with each passing minute. The city was falling despite humanity's courage and despite the Emperor's power. Only a permanent seal could end the invasion, and only the Emperor could create that seal. In the community center, the giant entity finally broke through. Its smoke-like form poured through the walls, reaching for the people huddled inside. Ella stood at the front of the group, her cross necklace gripped in one hand, her other hand held by Dan. "We're not afraid of you," she shouted, though her voice shook. "We choose life! We choose each other! You can't have us!" The entity laughed, a sound like breaking glass and screaming children. "Your choice means nothing. You are weak, divided. Each of you, alone in your own mind. Pretending connection makes you strong." "We're not pretending," Dan said, "and we're not alone." Not anymore. The entity reached for Trixie, recognizing the child as the emotional center of this group's resistance. If it could consume her, the others would break. But as its tendril extended toward the little girl, something extraordinary happened. Every person in that community center felt the same thought simultaneously, not imposed from outside, like the Emperor's guidance, but arising naturally from their shared determination. Protect the child, protect each other, choose together. The collective will of 50 ordinary humans created a flash of light, not golden like the Emperor's power, not white like angelic grace. Just simple, clear, human light born from choice and love and absolute refusal to surrender. The entity's tendril burned away. The creature itself recoiled, wounded by something it didn't understand and couldn't consume. At the fortress, the Emperor sensed what had just happened. His eyes widened in shock. Impossible. They created a psychic flash without training, without enhancement, without my guidance. Not impossible, Lucifer said softly. Just human. This is what I've been trying to show you. They don't need your control. They need each other, and the freedom to choose courage. The Emperor stared down at Los Angeles, really seeing it for the first time. Not as a city that needed fixing, not as a species that needed guidance, but as billions of individual choices creating something greater than any single being could impose. Messy, chaotic, inefficient, and absolutely magnificent. I have been wrong, the Emperor said quietly. The admission seemed to cost him something fundamental. For longer than your species can remember, I believed humanity required my guidance to survive. I built an empire on that principle. I made choices that sacrificed billions for the sake of species survival. And all of it was based on a failure to trust in their strength. So what now? Chloe asked. The invasion is still happening. People are still dying. The Emperor looked at his hands, at the golden armor that had defined him for ages beyond counting. Now, I make a choice of my own, not as humanity's master, not as their emperor, but as one of them, making the sacrifice they would make for each other. Wait, Lucifer said, understanding flooding through him. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. There is no other way, the Emperor interrupted, and I am the only one capable of this sacrifice. For once, let me do something not because I command or control, but because I choose freely, because it is right. Before anyone could stop him, the Emperor rose into the air above Los Angeles. His armor blazed with light that lit up the entire city. His consciousness expanded, reaching out to touch every human mind, but not to control them. Instead, he felt their fear, their courage, their love, their hope, their absolute determination to survive. He felt the connections between them, the web of choices and relationships that made them strong. I came to your reality to save humanity. The Emperor's voice resonated across Los Angeles, heard by every person simultaneously. I believed I knew the only way. I was mistaken. You have shown me that strength comes not from unity of purpose imposed from above, but from diversity of choice, bound together by will. I cannot guide you, but I can ensure you have the tools to guide yourselves. His body began to dissolve, not destroyed, but transformed. Golden light spread from him like ripples in water, flowing down toward the city, toward the people. The Emperor's consciousness fragmented into billions of pieces, each piece finding a human mind and settling there like a seed planted in fertile soil. Every person in Los Angeles suddenly felt it. A warmth in their thoughts, an awareness of cosmic threats, a psychic immune system that would protect them from manipulation by interdimensional entities, an instinct for sensing danger before it manifested, but nothing that controlled them. Nothing that told them what to do or how to think. Just protection. Just tools. The freedom to use those tools remained entirely their own. The dimensional tiers began to close. With the Emperor's consciousness anchoring reality from within billions of human minds, the barriers stabilized. The cosmic entities howled in rage as their access points sealed. They clawed at the barriers but couldn't break through. Human will, enhanced but not controlled by the Emperor's gift, pushed back with overwhelming force. Within minutes, every tier had closed. The entities retreated to whatever nightmare dimensions they came from. The sky cleared. Los Angeles stood, damaged, but intact. Millions of people remained alive because they had chosen to protect each other, and because an ancient being had finally learned to trust in their choice. Lucifer stood on the fortress balcony, feeling the Emperor's presence everywhere and nowhere. The golden giant was gone, his physical form dissolved. But his consciousness remained, spread across every human on Earth, a whisper of power and knowledge that each person could access or ignore as they chose. Can you hear me? Lucifer asked the air. A response came, not in words but in impressions. The Emperor's voice, barely audible, like an echo of an echo. I hear, I see. I am everywhere now, and nowhere. I cannot guide you, but I watch, I protect, and I learn. Did you find your purpose? Lucifer asked quietly. I found something better than purpose. I found trust. The Emperor's presence faded further, becoming part of the background of reality itself. Survive, grow, Surprise me. In the community center. Ella hugged Dan and Trixie, all of them crying with relief. She felt the new awareness in her mind, the gift the Emperor had left behind. She could sense danger before it manifested, could feel the dimensional barriers and know they were holding. But the choice of how to use that gift, whether to use it at all, remained entirely hers. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." "No," Dan corrected gently. "He did it. He gave up everything." "We all did it," Chloe said, joining them. "He learned from us as much as we benefited from his gift. That's what makes it work." Days passed. Los Angeles began to rebuild. The strange events were explained away as mass hallucination caused by gas leaks, terrorist attacks, natural disasters, anything that fit the comfortable narrative of a world that didn't want to acknowledge cosmic horror. But those who had been there knew the truth. They had faced extinction and survived through choice, courage, and the sacrifice of a being who finally learned to trust in humanity's strength. Lucifer sat at the bar in Lux, pouring whiskey for himself and Chloe. Amenadiel stood nearby, his wings folded, reporting that heaven considered the crisis resolved. God remained silent but seemed satisfied with the outcome. The devil and the angel and the detective, an unlikely team that had helped save the world. "Do you think he's really gone?" Chloe asked, gesturing vaguely at the air around them. "Or is he still out there somehow?" "He's everywhere," Lucifer replied, "spread across billions of minds. Not controlling them, just existing alongside them, watching, protecting." He took a drink, rather like my father actually, absent but present, distant but aware. Though at least the Emperor earned his position through sacrifice rather than simply demanding worship. "That almost sounded like you respected him," Amenadiel observed with a slight smile. "He learned," Lucifer admitted. "That's more than most ancient cosmic beings can say. He came here convinced he knew the only way to save humanity. He left having learned that humanity could save themselves if given the tools and freedom to choose." Ella arrived at Lux with Linda and Maze, the unlikely trio having bonded through shared trauma. The forensic scientist still wore her cross necklace, her faith intact, despite, or perhaps strengthened by, everything she had witnessed. "So," she said brightly, accepting a drink from Lucifer, "when's the next apocalypse? Because I feel like we're getting pretty good at this saving the world thing." "Please don't jinx us," Linda said, though she smiled. "I have enough material for therapy sessions to last several lifetimes." Maze just grunted, sharpening a demon blade. "Next time something invades Earth, I'm stabbing it first and asking questions never." They laughed together, the sound of humans and angels and demons choosing to be allies rather than enemies. Outside, the city of Los Angeles continued its eternal dance of chaos and creation. Millions of people made millions of choices every moment. Some good, some bad, all contributing to the messy, beautiful tapestry of human existence. And somewhere beyond individual perception, spread across every human mind on Earth, the Emperor of mankind maintained his eternal vigil. He could no longer guide or control. He could only watch and protect and feel a satisfaction he had never known in all his ages of rule. He had found his purpose not as humanity's master, but as its silent guardian. Not imposing his will from a throne of gold, but offering protection from within the very consciousness of those he had once sought to command. The cosmic threats still circled beyond the dimensional barriers. They would try again someday, but they would find not a divided, vulnerable species, but a unified force of billions of individuals, each making their own choices, each protected by a fragment of ancient power that asked nothing in return except that they remain free. Lucifer raised his glass in a toast. "To the golden idiot who finally learned what I've known all along. Humanity doesn't need gods. They need each other. And maybe a little help from unlikely friends," Chloe added, clinking her glass against his. "And definitely better mental health resources," Linda contributed. "And more stabbing," Maze insisted. They drank together as the sun set over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The Emperor of Mankind had come to Lucifer Morningstar's universe, seeking to impose order on chaos. Instead, he had become part of that chaos, learning that true strength came not from control but from trust, not from guidance but from freedom, not from ruling but from serving. High above the city, in the empty fortress at Griffith Observatory, a single golden light flickered and faded. The impossible architecture began to dissolve, returning the landmark to its original form. The Emperor's physical presence was gone from this place, but his consciousness remained everywhere, a whisper in the wind, a warmth in human thoughts, a shield against the darkness beyond. And in that dissolution, in that final surrender of control, the Emperor of Mankind found something he had sought across ages beyond counting but never possessed: peace. Not the peace of victory or domination, but the peace of knowing that humanity would survive not because he forced them to, but because they chose to. Together, free, unbroken, human. The stars came out above Los Angeles. Reality held firm, and life continued. Messy and chaotic and absolutely worth protecting.